Hey, Liam Austin here, co-founder of Entrepreneurs HQ. We're here for the Cold Email Success Summit. Right now we've got Mike Taylor, who is the founder at bluetick.io. He runs this email marketing tool, which is for warm and cold email. He's probably going to tell you a little bit about this, as well as specifically how important the follow-up is. And just prior talking, before we had this interview about the numbers and the data and what works better and not. And so there's some fantastic numbers I think you'll probably be able to share with you today as well. But Mike, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Liam. I appreciate it.
No worries. Do you want to just, I know we had a chat before this, do you want to just, for everyone else that's listening at home, do you want to just introduce a little bit more about yourself and the approach that you have towards email?
Sure. So BlueTick is really arranged around a process that I developed over the course of a number of years. My background here is really in software development, but one of the things that I do as part of a different business that I own is I run a conference called MicroConf, and my role in that conference is to help bring sponsorships in. And I recognize that over time I was doing the exact same process year after year to help bring in sponsors and initiate communications with them, ask if they were interested in sponsoring the conference. And it really boiled down to doing some sort of initial outreach and then following up with them to make sure that I got an answer of some kind. The worst thing to do in most sales situations is to send an email, wait, and if you don't hear anything, assume that they're not interested. You really need an answer of some kind so that you're not just sending messages into a black hole, then you have no visibility or no idea what's going on. So BlueTick was designed around the process that I used to communicate with people and just continually follow up with them until I got an answer, yes or no, or I decided that it just simply wasn't worth following up with them anymore. And that's really more in a cold email scenario. But when you have people who you have at least some form of a relationship with, what you don't want to do is send them an email, and if you don't hear back, assume that they're not interested. Chances are really good that they just got busy and it slipped down on their priority list. And at some point, people actually feel bad about replying to you. So if I send you an email and you don't get back to me for a week, there's some point in that timeline where you see the email and you don't want to reply to it because you feel bad about having waited for 5 or 6 days. So you just don't. But by following up, I actually re-engage with you and give you permission to follow up at that point. So, the software works really well in both the warm and cold email scenarios, but the whole...
Specifically for yourself, and I'm sure you've learned quite a lot along the way. So in terms of, the follow-up process, what is
to them? There are probably cases where, and I have an email sequence set up specifically for this, but there's times where I want to send somebody a message and say, hey, can we get on a call? And I have the software configured so that when they click through and they go over to my Calendly link and they sign up for a time to talk to me, that's when it will stop emailing them. It doesn't stop if they click on the link, doesn't stop if they open it. It waits until they have clicked on it and scheduled a time to talk to me, because until that point, they still haven't done what I wanted them to do. So you really need to build your email sequences around this idea of a goal. And whatever that goal happens to be, every single email in that particular sequence needs to be geared or aimed at getting them to accomplish or take that action that would achieve the goal. So if it's to reply, every email you want to give them a reason to be able to reply and tell you, hey, I'm not interested or I am interested, and then take them to the next step in whatever your sales funnel is.
I think it's great to realize that we can automate a lot of this, and if you are trying to get someone to schedule a time in your calendar, and it might be, I don't know, Calendly or a schedule once or something like that, these sequences that you've automated in some kind of email marketing software, you are, it sounds like you're connecting those other tools to your software to, trigger certain events. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Because the reality is that the idea of somebody responding to an email and hitting reply, that coming back into your mailbox, that's really just an event. So BlueTick will pull people out of an email sequence when it sees certain events, and you configure what the events are that you want it to be fed into a particular email sequence. But I mean, the reality is, like, you want to gear the entire email sequence around getting them to take whatever that action is. You don't want to bounce back and forth between, hey, come to this webinar, and then second email, try and get them to reply to it. It's like you really want to have one action in mind, and then give them a bunch of reasons along the way through that email sequence to get them to take that action. And if you can't get them to do that, then there's a couple of things that could be wrong. One is you could be just targeting the wrong people, or they're not interested, or it is not a good time. And the not being a good time is a surprisingly large percentage of the time that will occur.
All right. Well, just with these different types of events, can you just maybe give us an idea of what is that action that we want to be able to our prospects to take, and what kind of events can we automate?
So again, like 95% of the time, you really want them to reply to an email because you need an answer of some kind. You have a open-ended question that you have for them that is something that you want or need an answer to, and it's important to you to get that answer. So that's the main focus of what BlueTick is for. I mean, it synchronizes with your mailbox and watches for those replies from specific emails. And if it sees a reply from it, and will pull the person out of the email sequence. Other types of things that you can do is, let's say that you have it wired up to your software where you're charging people for whatever your software happens to do, and their credit card expires. Well, you can send them into an email sequence that watches to see if their credit card information was updated on your website, and if so, then pull them out of the email sequence, because your email sequence is designed to get them to come back to your website and update their credit card information. So there's all these different places in your sales funnel or in your business processes where you need to communicate with somebody and you need them to perform an action of some kind, and that email sequence will give them instructions, tell them what they need to do, and once they've done it, that's kind of the end of that particular email sequence. The other thing to keep in mind here is that that's not just sales, it's not just marketing, it's operational stuff as well. So any place where you can plug an automated process in, it's going to help. Now, the key thing here is that this is different than something like an automation email software such as Infusionsoft or Aweber or Drip or anything like that. The way BlueTick works is these emails are coming directly from your mailbox, so they look personal. And that's really a key piece of sending out either warm or cold emails. You want to have those emails look like they came from a real person and somebody sat there and typed out the email and sent it, because once you have established, or once the other person has established that this email is not coming from a real person, they kind of tune out. Your percentages, your conversion rates will drop, your response rates will drop, and it's not anything bad that you're particularly saying. It's just they view it as an email they received from an automated system, and people love to ignore automated systems. You get an automated email from something that says, "Hey, your credit card payment is due," or here's a report for you to download. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But when it comes from a real person, or when it looks like it comes from a real person, people pay more attention to it. So that creates a higher conversion rate. And by conversion rate, I really mean response rate, because conversion rates and response rates are not exactly the same thing. But the idea behind these email sequences is to get a response so that you're not sending these emails into a black hole, and then you don't know or have any idea where things stand. And that's the worst position to be in. It's like you've sent a couple of emails and you still don't know.
So in terms of the things that we don't know, what are some maybe campaigns that you've seen that have worked really, really well in terms of getting the responses, getting the reply? What are some examples maybe you could share?
Sure. The one that I kind of point people to is I actually implemented this as part of a demo process that I ran for BlueTick a while back. That when somebody would come to the website, and it was back when the product was still kind of in an early access period, you could go to the website and there was a form there that you just put in your email address and says request an invite. That would take you over to a form. It was run by Gravity Forms on a WordPress website, and it would ask a bunch of questions. And from there, I would look at the response and say, do I want to talk to this person or not? Because there were some people who would fill out, who listened to my podcast, and or they were students. They just kind of wanted to kick the tires or take a look around. But the reality of the situation was it was going to be a waste of my time to try and interact on a one-to-one basis with these people. I didn't want to have to commit half hour or an hour to doing a demo with a student who's simply not going to pay for the software. So I use that as kind of a filtering process, and at that point, they've raised their hand. They've filled out the form and they've said, hey, I would like to see this, or I would like to get in on this and at least kick the tires a little bit and see if it's going to work for my business. So I would kick those into an email sequence and then customize that first email and invite them to come on to a demo. And all of the emails that were in the rest of that email sequence, they were completely automated. The first email tends, and this is kind of a general rule of thumb that I've seen, the first email in a warm email scenario will get about a 30% response rate. If you do a really good job with your second email, you can get another 30%, and then third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc., depending on how far you want to take it, that will comprise the rest of it. In this particular email sequence, I got an 80% response rate. Now, not everybody clicked through and actually scheduled a demo, but I got an 80% of the people who went through that process. I got a yes, I'm going to be on a demo, or hey, I'm just not interested this time, or just some questions. But I at least got responses. And the fact that it's that number is that high is it comes from two different things. One is they were kind of warrant email prospects, and the other thing is that they'd already raised their hands, so they were highly targeted already. And the combination of those two things really drives that number up, and obviously, like, it helps the bottom line of your business, you know, in terms of whatever the KPIs are around what you're trying to do.
With that particular example, what defined a warm email?
You mean the target person, or the email that was being sent?
Well, you just mentioned there that it was a combination of the warm email, which meant that you had maybe some kind of prior relationship with them that helped you get that 80% result. What was it that turned them into like a warm lead, or that into a warm email?
So it was the fact of them coming to the website and then filling out a form and essentially requesting more information and saying, hey, I would like to be invited into this software to take a look at it. So at that point, they've really raised their hand already to say, I would like to see more. And of those people who said, I want to see more, the personal invitation to sign up and see a personal demo from me was what got it to the 80%. Now, if I were using a list that I bought, for example, or if I exported my LinkedIn contacts and then imported them into the software, that would similarly, for LinkedIn contacts, it would probably have a similarly high response rate over the course of several emails. You're not going to get 80% on that first email. It's just not going to happen. But if you send 5 emails, your chances of getting to 80% are substantially higher. But that's also with LinkedIn, because these people that are connected to you through LinkedIn already have some sort of relationship with you. Either you've worked with them personally in the past, or you've crossed paths before. Maybe you did consulting work for their company, or they did some for yours, or they found out about you online because you have a substantial social presence, for example, and they connected with you because they read your book or read a white paper that you wrote, and they want to hear more about you, or just want to be connected to you or within your circles. That's very different than a true cold email scenario where you've bought a list from somebody, or you've scraped it from like DNS entries or something along those lines. Like, you have zero relationship, and they have not